all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our hope. Amen. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. As we've been making our way through the Beatitudes during Lent this year, there are 5 Sundays in Lent. There are 9 Beatitudes, at least the way I count them. Some people say there's 8, some people say there's 10. Feel free to count them however you like. Don't want to fight over it. But if there's 9, say, we can pair them up and do 2 each week, except for 1 week, and that's today. Because conveniently, this is one that kind of stands alone anyway. It's the one that, it stands alone, I think, because it's the one that is probably the simplest to understand and the hardest to do. I'm going to say that differently. It's the simplest to understand and the hardest to be, I think, is a better way of saying that. Because that's what the Beatitudes are about, isn't it? They're blessings for what is, and what could be, and what has been. They're kind of universal in time. And see, as I've said before, I think the way Jesus expressed these, and there may well have been more than the 8, 9, or 10, depending on how you count them. The way he expressed these was because he was moving through the crowd, and he saw people, and he didn't just see them, he saw them and who they were, and he talked to them. And he told them they are blessed. Not that they could be if they did this, or not that they will be because they did that. They are because they do. They are because they be. And here he encounters somebody and says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Here's why I think this is the easiest one to understand. Peacemaker is pretty straightforward. A maker of peace. That seems pretty easy to understand. Someone who makes peace. They will be called, I'm going to come back, as you can guess. I'm going to come back to that. But they will be called children of God. Well, that's interesting because we're all children of God, aren't we? We're all children of God. In fact, as I've said before, I don't think Jesus just talked at people. I think he talked with people. And I'm sure that when he said, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God, somebody probably said, but Jesus, you say we are all children of God. Why is it that you're singling out the peacemakers as children of God? And I think Jesus would say, thank you for listening so closely, but just think about what I said. They will be called children of God. I have to keep reminding you all that you are children of God because you don't seem to understand that you are all children of God. That's why I have to keep saying it. Sorry, that was me speaking for Jesus and also myself. You are all children of God. The thing is, we have trouble with that. I think we have a lot of trouble with that sometimes. Because we don't feel somehow that we live up to whatever it is that Jesus thinks a child of God ought to be. You know, just like we have trouble believing that we can be like Jesus or be Jesus because we don't think we can live up to that. Because Jesus is something else, right? Jesus is like, you know, we've put him up here and we can't ever achieve that because, you know, it's Jesus. That level of perfection is, hang on. If you read the stories, Jesus wasn't perfect. Partly because Jesus, like you and I, was human, but also partly because in experiencing that humanity, the point of Jesus is to show us that we aren't just of the earth, we are created of the divine Spirit. Remember the story. I know I keep repeating it, so you must remember it by now. In the beginning, when all was good, we were created of the earth and, like everything else in creation, of the divine Spirit. The divine Spirit is in each of us. The point of Jesus is to show you that. The point of Jesus is to show us all that we are capable of everything that Jesus is capable of. We've learned stories that make us set Jesus apart. In fact, Jesus is truly a child of God. Think about all of the people that you might want to mention from, say, history that we've considered to be peacemakers, or that we've considered to be most like Jesus. What did we do with them? Well, some of them we made saints in some traditions, but we most certainly put them up here and made them so magnificent we could not possibly be like them. Not so we could aspire to them, but so that we wouldn't have to worry about living up to that. And the point of Jesus is for us to aspire to be that, to show us that we're capable of it. So what will we call those who actually hear Jesus and do it? Well, we'll call them children of God, because that's what they're doing. They're living into their potential as a child of God and simply being that. And so we'll point at people like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. and Mother Teresa and all of the people that we through history would have considered to be most like Jesus, and we'll say, that person is a child of God. I'm going to go one step further and say that person is a child of God just like Jesus. But we don't necessarily want to do that, do we? And we don't necessarily want to say, hey, I could do that too. Because that's hard work. And there are potential downfalls too, if we think about what happened to some of those people. But the thing is, Jesus is trying to show us that we are capable of that. That we are all capable of living into what it means to be a child of God. And when you do, compassion, grace, love, kindness, standing up for what is just and right, living true and authentically to the Spirit of God that is in each of us, well, we're going to be peacemakers. We are going to be peacemakers, makers of peace, because we'll be doing all of those very things that will make peace. This is where it starts to get tricky. First of all, we don't necessarily want to do all of those things. Secondly, we don't necessarily, even if we feel like we want to, we don't necessarily find it easy to do those things, and we like easy. But even if we're up for the challenge, it's hard work. It's hard work to make peace, because we don't all think the same way. We don't all feel the same way. We certainly don't all feel the same way when it comes to how we share what we feel, or what we think, or what we believe. We don't even agree on what it means to have peace. Peace isn't simply the absence of conflict. We do, it's not just that. That's part of it, but it isn't just that. And one of the reasons it can't be just that is because of how we make peace in the world right now. And it's very easy in this moment to say, okay, how is this speaking to us now in the 21st century? How is this speaking to us? Well, we make peace by defeating the enemy and imposing peace on them. We win, and then we impose it, and then we enforce it. And if you think for a moment, This isn't any different than the crowd that Jesus was talking to. They lived in the era of the Pax Romana, right? That's what we called it. We still do. Roman peace. And how did the Romans make peace? Well, actually, if you watch Life of Brian, there's this great scene where the Judeans start talking about all of the things that the Romans haven't done for them, and it turns out the Romans have done a lot for them. Like they've built aqueducts and roads and stuff and done all sorts of great things. Except they've done that by conquering people and oppressing them and forcing them to live the way that the Romans think they should in order to support the Romans. That's the Roman peace. And we still do that. We still do that. We think peace is simply forcing people to not be violent. Forcing people to get along. That's not peace. I want to say that's not the way Jesus would define peace, but it's just not peace. It's not just Jesus that would say that. That's an enforced absence of conflict. The conflict is this far away, simmering under the surface. I guarantee you. Looking for an opportunity to happen again. Wes was really wise earlier when he said that peace doesn't last. That kind of peace never lasts. Because it isn't peace. In order to create peace, we need to create a place, an environment, a community where people feel they belong and belong because not just because they fit into it or they get along with the people that are in it, but that they bring themselves to it in a way that becomes part of the community. That we all feel like we're not only contributing, but we're getting something out of it and, best part, creating something. And what we're creating is peace. What we're creating is the kingdom of heaven that Jesus keeps talking about, which is this close. Right? The kingdom of heaven is near. Yes, it is. It's this close. It's this close because Jesus believes, and this is the best part, Jesus believes in us. Jesus, I think, believes that in showing us what we're capable of, that we will rise to the challenge. We might not always 100% succeed at it, but we'll rise to the challenge. And we will try to live into it. This is a moment at which we can't set Jesus apart. We can't set all of the people that we think of as these great figures in history who've been peacemakers or children of God. We can't set them apart. We have to embrace them and hold them close enough and intimately enough to understand why we think that's who they are. Because that's who we are too. Who we could be. We have a variety of ways of describing people who have a role in peace. I recently was honored to be part of the celebration of life of the staff sergeant who was in Bashaw and in Stettler, who died very suddenly recently. And when I talked to his family, one of the things they said was, I asked, did he have was there a scripture passage or anything? And right away, well, his favorite verse, like he keeps saying it, his favorite verse was, "Blessed are the peacemakers." The thing is, he absolutely was a peacemaker. Absolutely. Not because he was an RCMP member. They're peacekeepers. In fact, in many ways, they're peace enforcers because their role is to serve and protect the people within the context of the law. What made Bruce different was he went beyond that. He was about creating community. In fact, he was a driving force in creating a wellness community in Bashaw that connected groups and organizations in Bashaw that serve the community. Because he was all about creating community. It wasn't just about enforcing the law. It was about creating a community in which, for example, in which they didn't always have to rely on the enforcers of the law to be the ones who deal with what are essentially health or wellness issues. It was about getting people to understand what it means to build community. That's the difference. Peacekeepers are part of that. People who have ideas about peace and what it ought to be or what it should be or what it can be. People who have a great education and understanding about it, that's great, but they're only part of that. We all have to have a part in it. We all have to be peacemakers, because peace isn't just about global peace. It's not just about countries not fighting. It's not just about communities not fighting. It's not just about people within communities. It's about people within households. It's about people within different kinds of communities, from churches to hockey teams. Peacemakers are children of God because they are living into what it means to be a child of God. We make peace when we approach things with an open heart, a willingness to learn, a willingness to understand, a willingness to compromise sometimes, a willingness to stand up for things that we know are unjust, a willingness to try and make community by engaging people, recognizing who we all are in our uniqueness and our diversity. Yes, absolutely. But in the context of creating connections and relationships that build communities of peace. That's how we go forward. Blessed are the peacemakers. They are children of God. Not just because we call them that, because we see what they've done, but because they are authentically being what we are all capable of, children of God.